first off, thanks for coming on today.
I'm happy.
For those who don't know you, tell us who you are and how you got involved with Marshfield Facts.
Absolutely. My name is Mary Price, and I was practically born and raised in Marshfield. Came down in 1969 in the third grade. So I went through Marshfield Public Schools, then stayed here, raised my family, who all went through Marshfield Public Schools and been involved in the community pretty much the whole time that we've been here. I had worked for a long time in nonprofits, mostly for Road to Responsibility was one of them, and then South Shore Community Action Council. I was there for many, many years and still continue to do a volunteer program with them. So my heart is definitely in nonprofit. And I became involved in Marshfield Facts through actually the Drug Task Force, which was run by the town of Marshfield. And at a certain point, they sort of morphed into joining with Marshfield Facts, which is a community coalition that had been running for several years. Marshfield Facts stands for Families, Adolescents Together Against Substances. And it's a community coalition designed to decrease the use of substance use among our youth and promote healthy wellness and lifestyles for youth. The community coalition has 12 sectors, which then involves the entire community, various parts of the entire community. And we've been fortunate to see just how many people are concerned about the issue of substance use in Marshfield among our youth. The sectors that we work with include the public school department. Jeff Granatino's been a longtime member of Marshfield Facts, the Marshfield Police Department. Phil Tavares has always been extremely responsive, and some of his detectives and officers work with us on a regular basis as well. We've recently partnered with the Marshfield Fire Department, and they've been amazing in their support in educating us around overdose issues in town and the way that they like to be visible in the community as a support to people. We work with many other community organizations, the Boys and Girls Club, the Ventress Memorial Library, youth programs. Newer to our community is the James P. Harrington organization, who does lots of wellness opportunities and work with youth, not only in their summer program, but year-round. And again, healthy lifestyles is what they're promoting for youth. Drugstore Theater has been a longtime partner of ours. And like many other places during COVID, sort of became quiet.
Yeah, we're quite familiar with Drugstore Theater here.
And they've recently gotten a significant sum from the Mass Legislature, which is awesome. So they're in the process of working with a new troupe of people to develop a new production of Drugstore Theater. So we're
Dr.
really
Joe
excited.
was on the board here for many years.
That's right. And so we're really excited to partner with them. One of the programs that Marshfield Facts did that really had standing room only in the auditorium. I mean, youth hearing from other youth is so powerful, and also parents hearing from youth. Perspective is amazing, and then the brain science behind addiction and substance use really pulls it all together. So we're super excited to work with them in their upcoming production. We have many community members, our civic and volunteer groups. We've worked with the Kiwanis, starting to work with the Elks in town, all of, again, who have programs targeting youth substance use and abuse in Marshfield and healthy coping. We have healthcare professionals who are members of our community who participate in the board, in particular someone from Boston Medical Center who's worked in pediatrics for years and years, and so has great perspective and knowledge on the issue of substance use and what Boston Medical and the Graken Center is doing in regards to that. We're really fortunate to have our town officials involved. Michael Morasco has been invaluable to Marshfield Facts and supporting Marshfield Facts, being at the meetings. One of our signature events, which is the Overdose Awareness Vigil, we've been holding that for about 5 years, and prior to that it was the Drug Task Force who was running that. Michael's always been a huge supporter of that, and actually the individual who came up with the idea to illuminate Town Hall purple. That's something that many places do internationally. August 31st is an International Overdose Awareness Day, and across the world you'll see public buildings illuminated in purple. And Michael did that and has supported that over the years. Our select board, has been involved as well, and we're really lucky to have their support. And our clergy in town have always been very supportive and involved in Marshfield FACTS. And even though personnel has changed over the years, each time a new person comes in, they're very committed
They get on board
to
with
working. They certainly do. They get right on board with that. So that's Marshfield FACTS in a nutshell.
So what's your role within the organization?
My role is the chair.
Okay.
And there's a leadership team that consists of myself and then a vice chair, Ann Kelly, who was the school nurse administrator for many years. So she has a really strong investment in supporting youth, and she was also one of the founders of Marshfield FACTS. Jennifer Cantwell is currently the secretary, but she was the other co-founder. She's been really the driving force behind Marshfield FACTS over these years and continues to remain with the organization. She's currently working with the district attorney's office. I didn't mention the district attorney's office, who's hugely supportive of Marshfield FACTS, in terms of grant money to do some of the programs that we've wanted to do, and supplying staff to do trainings, and just an overall resource. I'm going to back up to one organization I didn't mention that's been critical, is the Marshall Community Rib Cook-Off. They've been running that event now 15 years
15
maybe,
years or so.
And they have donated consistently to Marshfield FACTS. And Stephen Halko-Sheehan, who runs the Marshall Community Rib Cook-Off, is the Marshfield FACTS treasurer. So
really?
That's an awesome partnership that we have right there.
We've had them on. They're fantastic.
They
And we'll
are
cover that.
fantastic. Yep, Robert Chelman and Rob and Ryan Lambert from the Marshall Public Schools is another person who's very involved in Marshfield FACTS, because again, we're looking at the same kind of high-risk population that she works with.
Exactly.
And so that's been a really valuable partnership there.
So when you're out in the community, what's kind of that 30-second mission statement that you're giving to people?
The mission statement is based around prevention, education, and awareness. Prevention starts with education, of course, and educating individuals about substances, about why youth might pick up substances, what the potential ramifications are of choosing to use substances at an early age, and then what are some of the strategies to use in the event that that's happening, or again to try to prevent that. Awareness and decreasing stigma is another huge piece of what Marshfield FACTS does. Through no one's fault of their own, it's hard to recognize that could potentially happen in your family. It can happen in any family. It can, no matter what, it can happen. And so we just try to make people aware of that, but then break down the stigma. Because when it does happen in your family, there's a tendency to not want to share that. It's confusing, it's painful, it's scary, and you don't want to be judged for your kid picking up. And so by decreasing the stigma and recognizing it can happen to anyone, and there's a phrase that I heard that always really struck me, was called innocent entry, which means someone picks up not with the intention of abusing substances or developing a substance use disorder. It's a very innocent entry that really could have happened to any of us who might have used at some point.
No one goes into it being like, I'm going to develop intentionally a substance abuse issue.
Not at all. Not at all. And the scary thing is, it happens before you know it. For some individuals, the first time they pick up, that could be it, or just prolonged use. Changes brain chemistry, and as we know from Drug Story Theater, a lot of changes take place in the brain. So raising the awareness and reducing that stigma is huge. One of our big events that we do that I mentioned is the International Overdose Awareness Day Vigil. And Primarily, it's there to support individuals who have lost someone to an overdose and, provide a really nice, calm, soothing recognition of that loss. And the other is to, again, raise awareness and reduce the stigma of people who have lost their lives to overdose. Again, as a family member, as a loved one, that's a difficult topic to broach. It's hard to gauge how people are going to respond to that information, and we want to make it so that people know there is no stigma to someone developing a substance use disorder.
So why is the organization so special to you specifically?
That came about as a result of members of my family struggling with substance use disorder, and specifically my son.
Right.
His substance use started in high school around the age of 14 or 15, and went from there. We saw many, many years of struggle with him with substance use disorder. Addiction is another phrase, but substance use disorder is what it is. And so to watch him struggle for all those years, for our whole family to struggle for all those years, and I'm always delighted to say he is 3 years in recovery
Awesome.
now and just doing fabulous. But that experience, and then his friends, other peers, other members of my family, nieces and nephews, and other people in my family struggled with this. And we were fortunate in that, because we all kind of shared it in our family, we had people to support and talk to, and so the isolation wasn't as significant as it could be in other families. I always check in with my son. Is it okay that I talk about this, that I mention you specifically? And he's always perfectly fine. Wow. He wants people to know. He wants people to understand the struggle. He wants people to know recovery is possible,
That's awesome.
that there's people like him out there actively working to support other people in recovery. And it's just a beautiful transformation, but extremely painful for all those years, for him and for the family members. And, then through his struggles, I got to know so many other people struggling with this, his peers, people in programs that he was in, and just to spend the time with folks like that who all want to recover. And it's a very confusing disease, and it's very challenging for people to recover and to get the right supports and the non-judgment in order to do that.
For sure.
That's why it's so meaningful to me to do this work, to not see other people have to go through that struggle, individuals and families in our community.
So every organization has needs. What's Marshfield's FACTS' most urgent needs?
Our most urgent need is our ability to raise awareness and to help get people educated and informed. People's lives are busy. In-person events are challenging. And so our big challenge is, how do we get this word out? How do we educate parents, school departments, people who work with youth, that kind of thing, on really best practices? Again, substance use has lots of misnomers and different ways that people looked at it. And so it's really important to look at what is evidence-based and to try to get the word out and the education to families and to youth about substance use. So that is really our biggest challenge.
So if someone wants to learn more about the organizations, what's the best ways for them to learn?
Their best way is to go to our website,
Okay.
which is marshallfacts.org. We also have Facebook. We're also on Instagram, so people can get information that way. But marshallfacts.org really gives a good overview of what Marshall Facts is, and has so many resources that parents can look at. There are a lot of resources out there online through government agencies, again, evidence-based programs that can assist in learning about substances, learning how substances get used, and how to talk to your kids specifically. That's huge. How to have the conversation with kids. And the resources are very specific.
Okay.
Say this, do this, stay away from that. The resources there are really fabulous. And
great.
so I would say that's the best way to learn about Marshall Facts. We do meet pretty much monthly meetings are always open. People are always able to attend meetings if they'd like to learn about FACTS as well that way.
Yeah, which leads me to, what if someone wants to get involved or volunteer? What?
They just need to reach out. They can reach out through the website or through Facebook, and we're always looking for people to be involved.
Is there certain things that you need or you're looking for with
It's
volunteers?
more the community input.
Okay.
And I think one of our huge needs right now is to hear from youth and parents. What do they know? What do they need? What would be helpful for them? We've been fortunate to partner with a national effort called the Opioid Response Network that will provide consultants to work on specific projects. And so one of the projects that we're looking at working on relatively soon is to do some sort of needs assessment in the community with parents and youth, because that way we can target our programming to what is it that people want to hear about. It's important for us to know what they know and what they don't know so that we can target our programming that way. So that's a big need. We want to hear those voices.
So every nonprofit faces challenges. What's the biggest challenges Marshfield FACTS has faced?
Again, I think involvement. And it's raising awareness so that people know that they can get involved.
Okay.
The concern is certainly there,
Right.
and the desire to help is certainly there. And it's just a matter of finding the right mechanisms to get people involved. In the past, when there was a lot of community events, volunteers would go and just man the table at community events. There's fewer and fewer of those at this point. But we definitely have projects that people could work on. One of the beautiful things about Marshfield FACTS has been that if you have a project that you want to work on, awesome, that's great. You can take the lead and then gather the support for people in the organization or outside the organization. So it can be, something just very specific, an issue you want to raise or a project that you want to run. The FACTS organization has the support. We do fortunately have the funds for it too. Not unlimited, but we do have funds that we can do various projects with.
Do other towns have something similar? Okay.
Other towns do. They have FACTS coalitions.
Okay.
And what other towns have, and that Marshfield FACTS is looking to pursue this grant season, is a grant called Drug-Free Communities. And that's a government-sponsored grant that will provide up to $125,000 per year to a municipality or school department to staff a program that does this type of work.
Really?
And so those two things combined, the community grassroots of the coalition, as well as having someone who's dedicated to furthering this mission and doing this work, is huge. So, fingers crossed. I think that we certainly can do that. We have the ability to get that grant, and other local communities also have
cool.
that. So we have a lot to draw on there.
So we talked about the challenges. On the flip side, what's been the most rewarding thing?
Personally for me, and I think for the group as a whole, is the development of the coalition.
Okay.
That by specifically targeting individuals and organizations to become involved, the collaborations have just been amazing. And again, they're typically project-based. For example, although we've been involved with Marshall Police Department on a number of things, we recently started an initiative to reward healthy risk-taking with youth.
Cool.
And essentially it's if the Marshall Police Department notices youth taking healthy risks, bike helmets or, various things like that, because healthy risk-taking is really a protective factor for kids in order to develop resilience and self-confidence. And so very simply, once that's observed, we partnered with Bees Ice Cream as well. So they'll receive a citation ticket, so
cool.
to speak, for an ice cream at Bees. But the recognition that that's going on is huge. One of the other really great partnerships that came about was Jen Cantwell had come across a book. It's a graphic novel called Hey Kiddo, written by a fairly local author from Massachusetts, and went to Teresa DeLuca at the Furnace Brook Middle School and said, what would you like to do with this book? And they started a book group. it was probably a 6 or 8 week book group where they met with kids, and the engagement of other teachers at the Furnace Brook Middle School
great.
was fabulous. They wanted to do it. They loved doing it. And so to be able to just, say to people, what do you think? How do you want to do this? And then we'll support you. That was awesome. The vigil for me is always a very powerful event. Personally,
Yeah, it is.
it's a very powerful event. I have close friends who have lost people. My son has lost people. It's devastating. And again, when we go back to the stigma of, oh, how did that person pass? It's a hard mouthful to say they overdosed on opiates. And so it's very freeing for people to be there and to be supported by people who have had that same loss.
Yeah, sure. What's that one thing that people don't realize about the organization when you're talking with them?
I think the amount of programs that we actually are doing, and sometimes it surprises me. I just recently did a synopsis of what we've done and who we've partnered with in the past year, and what we're planning to do. A couple of those I talked about the police department. The Marshall Fire Department just did a training for us on overdose protocols. What happens when that happens in your home? What's the role of the first responders? And we also partnered that with a Narcan training so that people become more aware of Narcan, its use, its availability. We're also planning to partner with the Chamber of Commerce and do a business training as well. Overdoses can happen anywhere, and the use of Narcan in the first couple of minutes of an overdose is huge. Can't hurt people. You're not liable for anything that happens. It's a very simple mechanism that could really save lives. We did a great project where we still do it with a grant from the district attorney's office, where we put together literacy kits. It includes books and activities for caregivers to use with their young children if there is substance abuse in the family. It's a very hard topic for children to understand. It's a very hard topic to talk to children about. And children often feel responsible for some of the chaos and things that are going wrong in the homes. And so these books and activities address that. They explain, in very young terms, what is substance use, how does that impact you and the family. We worked with several people from the elementary schools in Marshfield, Karen Hubbard and Emily Bird, excuse me, and also their reading instructors who vetted all the books and said, we feel like these would be great books. There's a subset of that project in the event that a child has lost someone to substance abuse, and in the grief that's involved in that's very specific to a child and very specific to substance use. And so those kits are in all the elementary schools and in some of the community programs at the library, down at JPH. The kits are available for people, and I know some of them have gone out. And we kind of do it as a lending library so that, people borrow the books, keep all the activities, and then just return the books so that we can continue to do them. They can be used in community settings. They could be used in classrooms to help educate.
Yeah. Let me ask you this: as someone that's on the front lines, are things getting better? Because I feel like 10, 15 years ago, like substance abuse, overdosing was really kind of front and center. You heard about it more. Is it just changed, or are things getting better? What is it from your perspective as someone on the front line here?
I think a lot of the coverage has changed.
Okay.
Statistics, CDC data, that type of thing. There's not a reduction in overdose deaths from opioids. There's a huge concerning uptick that's happening now,
Really?
Which is the fact that there's a synthetic opioid that's being mixed into many, many substances. And just a tiny, tiny dose is fatal. It's called fentanyl.
Right, fentanyl.
And almost all overdoses that are recorded now, fentanyl is present.
In it.
But it's not just fentanyl mixed with heroin. They're finding fentanyl in cocaine. They're finding fentanyl in Adderall, Xanax, many of the pills that people never would have expected to find fentanyl. And the other huge concerning piece is that these are available online. That
Right.
adults and children are able to purchase these pressed pills is what they call them. They're
Right.
pills that are manufactured really in people's bathtubs and that sort
Yeah.
of thing involving fentanyl, and they're able to access them online.
Right.
There's definitely legislation, there's definitely advocacy groups that are working to raise the awareness of that, implement laws and changes and that type of thing. But it's hard to capture and it's hard to
Right.
control. And that's one of Marshall FACTS' hugest concerns for our youth and our adults in Marshfield, is the availability, not only in the community of pressed pills, but ability to access them on their website.
Yeah.
The year before last at the vigil, Chief DeVaris spoke specifically about those and was able to cite 2 examples in Marshfield, in the recent past, where people have overdosed on fentanyl. I believe one was fatal, one was not. And it's just our huge concern that we're going to have that type of an overdose fatality in Marshfield among our youth. And so that's just a huge thing that we want to make people aware of.
Right. Right. So before we wrap up, is there anything else you want our listeners to know about Marshfield FACTS?
I think just that we're there, and that there's really a lot of people in the community who are concerned about this issue. The fact that we're all volunteer hinders our ability to do a lot, which is why I'm really hopeful about the Drug-Free Communities Grant, and being able to really expand the programming and partner really strongly with all the partners that we do have in order to just make this visible and make it as helpful as possible to the community.
Great, Mary. Thank you so much
Oh,
for
you're
coming
welcome.
on today,
You're
and wish you the best of luck going forward with Marshfield FACTS.
Thank you very much.